Zero gravity, full throttle. The tavern was a pulsating hub of life on Proxima Station, a place where the diverse species of the galaxy crossed paths. Bathed in the warm, colorful glow of neon lights, the vibrant establishment buzzed with the chatter of different languages, laughter spilling out over the hum of strange music. On the fringes of this cacophony, a zero-G wrestling arena was the centerpiece, its translucent force fields shimmering with every collision. The spectators around the arena were a motley group, hailing from different corners of the galaxy, their faces glowing with anticipation and excitement. In the heart of this arena, Thrax, a Sogmian of imposing stature, stood like an immovable mountain. His rough, stony skin reflected the myriad lights around him, his yellow eyes gleaming with confidence. He was the reigning champion of the zero-G wrestling scene on Proxima Station, a title he defended with brute strength and fierce determination. To the spectators, he was an unbeatable force, a spectacle to behold. The air in the tavern vibrated with palpable excitement. Some were there for the sheer thrill of the matches, while others had more vested interests, placing bets on their favorite fighters. The air was rich with the sense of exotic food and drink, mingling with the distinct metallic tang that characterized the station's recycled atmosphere. Patrons from all walks of life, traders, smugglers, travelers, and thrill-seekers occupied spots around the arena, their attention divided between their business and the ongoing match. Amidst the crowd, a figure detached himself from the shadows. He wasn't the tallest or the most physically imposing in the room, but there was an air about him that commanded attention. His icy blue eyes scanning the boisterous scene, his body language relaxed, almost nonchalant. The human appeared as just another face in the crowd, lost in the spectacle of the zero-G wrestling match. Victor made his way to the bar, navigating the mass of patrons with a practiced ease. The flicker of various neon signs played off his jet-black hair, casting an array of shifting colors onto his face. He ordered a drink, a local concoction that left trails of vibrant, luminescent fumes in the dimly lit tavern. As he waited, Victor's gaze drifted to the wrestling match, watching Thrax's display of raw power with an unreadable expression. His eyes held a spark of interest. His fingers idly traced the rim of his now-filled glass, the cool liquid within casting a soft glow on his hand. Vic then raised his glass to his lips, taking a sip. A group of Ustur, their metallic frames glinting in the low light, engaged in a rapid exchange of data, no doubt calculating the odds of the match. A couple of Punabs chittered excitedly, their small, furry forms practically vibrating with anticipation. And over at a corner table, Amires sat in quiet contemplation, her dark, slender fingers gracefully swirling a goblet of star wine. Victor watched it all, a silent observer in the midst of the spectacle. The roar of the crowd subsided to a murmur, anticipation crackling in the air. All eyes were on Thrax, who towered above them all on the stage. He threw his arms wide, his rumbling voice echoing through the tavern.
Who among you has the courage to face me in the zero-G arena?
Thrax's words came out as a challenge, a familiar ritual that the crowd had come to anticipate every night. He raised a massive hand, within it a small shimmering object, a key.
To the winner, my Thimble Lobi, but only if you can best me.
A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, despite the predictability of the offer. The Thimble Lobi, a spaceship similar to a road car, was a coveted prize. The stakes of Thrax's challenge, repeated night after night, had never lost its allure. No one moved for a moment, the crowd stunned into silence. Then the tavern erupted into a frenzy. Conversations flew fast and furious, patrons arguing and wagering on the potential contenders. Yet, amidst the clamor, no one stepped forward. Even with the promise of the Lobi, the fearsome reputation of Thrax held them back. Thrax stood undeterred on the stage, a smug smile playing on his stony face. From his corner, the man watched the spectacle unfold, his eyes alight with a curious spark. Victor leaned back in his chair, a slow, thoughtful smile spreading across his face. His fingers drummed a quiet rhythm on the table, a silent echo of the racing thoughts in his mind. In the midst of the laughter and the jeers, Victor got up from his chair and made his way towards the stage. Each step calm and assured, his gaze locked on the towering figure of Thrax. He ignored the incredulous stares, the whispers that trailed in his wake, a river of disbelief parting before him. As he stepped onto the zero-G wrestling platform, the laughter in the tavern died down, replaced by an uneasy silence. Patrons exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise, curiosity, and a hint of concern. The mismatch was clear. The lean figure of the man seemed almost fragile compared to the stony bulk of Thrax. Undeterred, Victor crossed his arms over his chest, his face an unreadable mask as he stared up at the Sogmian. For a moment, he looked like a man on a leisurely stroll rather than a challenger in a wrestling match that could potentially be lethal. Thrax, on the other hand, broke into a wide, toothy grin, a rumbling laugh echoing from his chest. He looked down at Victor, his yellow eyes glinting with amusement and anticipation. The silence stretched, heavy and palpable, before being shattered by Thrax's deep, booming voice.
So, the human thinks he can beat me?
Thrax said, his voice filled with mirth, causing a ripple of laughter to run through the crowd.
You sure you don't want to back out now, Tiny?
Victor, undaunted, simply flashed a roguish grin.
Well, you know what they say about underdogs, don't you, big guy?
Thrax's brow furrowed, a ripple of confusion passing through him.
No, what do they say?
They're the ones you least expect to bite.
Victor's response was swift, his tone light, almost teasing, causing a murmur of chuckles to spread through the crowd. Thrax's eyes narrowed, but he was clearly amused.
Well then, I look forward to your bite, human.
In the crowd, bets were hastily placed, whispers exchanged, and eyes widened in anticipation. Amidst the clamoring crowd, a figure caught Victor's attention. A beautiful woman, standing near the edge of the throng, her chestnut hair cascading around her shoulders in loose waves. She seemed captivated by the spectacle, her bright hazel eyes sparkling with excitement and anticipation. Victor sidled up to her, an easy grin spreading across his face.
Betting on the big guy, are you?
He asked, his tone light and teasing. She turned to look at him, an eyebrow arching in amusement.
And who would you suggest I bet on then, the rookie?
With a playful wink, Victor retorted,
I'd say that's a pretty safe bet.
She laughed, a clear melodic sound that was barely audible over the buzz of the crowd.
Well then,
she said, her eyes sparkling with laughter.
I'll look forward to seeing you prove me wrong.
With a final, confident smile, the man turned back to the arena, leaving her to join the raucous crowd cheering for Thrax. As he walked away, the woman's laughter still echoed in his ears. The announcer's voice boomed over the speaker system.
Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed guests of all species, the match is about to begin.
The resulting roar from the crowd was deafening, a wave of sound that washed over the combatants. With a loud hum, the gravity controls of the arena were dialed down, the sudden weightlessness pulling an involuntary gasp from the crowd. Victor felt his stomach lurch as his feet lifted off the floor, his body adapting to the sensation of zero-G. Thrax, on the other hand, moved with the grace of a seasoned athlete, his muscular form twisting in the air as he propelled himself towards the human with the help of one of the small props scattered around the arena. A hush fell over the crowd as the Sogmian champion closed the distance, his fist drawn back for the first strike. Victor barely had time to react, his body spinning out of the way as Thrax's fist whizzed past him. The crowd gasped, then cheered. Victor righted himself, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. The match had begun. Thrax, unfazed by his missed strike, launched himself back at Victor with a ferocious roar. His movements were fluid, each muscle rippling under his stony skin as he manipulated his weight in the zero-G environment. On the other hand, Victor seemed to be on the defensive, his body constantly twisting and turning to avoid Thrax's relentless attacks. His movements were less refined, betraying his lack of experience in the zero-G wrestling arena, but they were infused with a raw, desperate energy. Each dodge, each evasive maneuver was driven by a sharp instinct for survival. The crowd was on the edge of their seats. Their eyes darted back and forth, following the two combatants as they danced in the air. Every near hit from Thrax was met with collective gasps, every successful evasion from Victor with surprised cheers. Amidst the blur of motion, the man's eyes remained focused, the light of determination shining brightly within them. His body moved with a purpose. His mind was calculating, analyzing Thrax's movements, searching for an opening. Their dance continued, a ballet of muscle and might, set against the backdrop of a stunned, captivated audience. Just when Victor thought he was getting the hang of the zero-G wrestling, Thrax managed to predict one of his evasive maneuvers. With a swift, powerful strike, the Sogmian champion sent the human hurtling towards the edge of the arena. A collective gasp filled the room as Victor collided heavily with the solid boundary. The impact sent a wave of pain coursing through his body. As he pushed himself off the edge, a streak of crimson caught his attention. His hand came away from his face smeared with blood, a sharp reminder of the reality of his situation. There was no time to dwell on the pain. Thrax was already closing in. Victor could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He had been confident, maybe too confident. But now, he couldn't help the frisson of regret that threaded its way through his thoughts. For the first time since the match began, Victor felt a surge of real fear. The thrill of the challenge had given way to the cold, hard reality of his situation. What had he gotten himself into? Just as Thrax lunged towards Victor, a sudden change swept over the zero-G wrestling arena. The steady hum of the gravity generator sputtered, then faltered. A loud clang echoed through the tavern as the gravity controls malfunctioned, sending a jolt through the arena. The change was immediate. Victor and Thrax were sent spiraling off course. Their bodies spun uncontrollably, limbs flailing in the unexpected shift. The crowd gasped, then erupted into a cacophony of shouts and cheers. In this chaos, Victor found an unexpected advantage. His movements were still clumsy and uncoordinated, but he was getting the hang of it. Thrax, on the other hand, seemed completely disoriented. His powerful strikes now reduced to flailing gestures. Seizing the opportunity, Victor propelled himself off a nearby wall, sending himself spiraling towards Thrax with a newfound determination. He was gaining momentum. He twisted midair, avoiding Thrax's flailing attempts to swat him away. Thrax, still struggling to adapt, roared in frustration. With a final forceful kick off the arena's boundary, Victor launched himself directly at Thrax. His body connected with a solid thud, sending the burly Sogmian spinning uncontrollably. The human took advantage of the momentary disorientation, swiftly reaching out to grab Thrax's arm, twisting it in a sudden, rapid movement. A sharp gasp cut through the noise of the crowd as Thrax's growls of frustration turned into a pained roar. Victor, still holding on to Thrax's now immobilized arm, used his momentum to swing around and push the Sogmian into a ring-out zone, effectively ending the match. As the malfunctioning gravity field restabilized, returning the tavern to its normal state, a stunned silence fell over the crowd. The underdog, the seemingly unseasoned newcomer, had triumphed. A moment later, the silence was shattered by a wave of cheers and applause, a mixture of disbelief, excitement, and admiration filling the room. Victor, panting heavily, blood trickling down his split lip, let a triumphant grin spread across his face. He had won. Against all odds, he had won. As the man reveled in his victory, a deep growl cut through the cheers. Thrax, now back on his feet, was glaring at the human with undisguised malice.
This isn't fair. The damn gravity malfunctioned.
Victor wiped the blood from his lip, meeting Thrax's glare with a steady gaze.
You're right.
He admitted, raising his voice so the crowd could hear him.
The gravity did malfunction. For both of us.
An anticipatory hush fell over the crowd. Victor continued, his tone challenging.
You issued the challenge, Thrax. You said anyone who could best you in this arena could claim your Fimble Lobi. Well, here we are.
Thrax bared his teeth, a low rumble emanating from his throat. But Victor didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, his gaze never leaving the Sogmians.
Unless, of course, the great Thrax doesn't keep his word?
A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Thrax's scowl deepened, but he remained silent, his yellow eyes burning into Victor's. Slowly, with a final, reluctant growl, Thrax extended his hand, revealing a small, gleaming key. The key to the Fimble Lobi. The crowd erupted into fresh cheers. Victor accepted the key, his triumphant grin returning.
Thank you, Thrax,
he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction.
It was an honor to wrestle you.
With that, he turned his back on the Sogmian, leaving Thrax to nurse his wounded pride. Amidst the clamor and applause, Victor's gaze roved across the tavern, searching for the fiery girl who had laughed in his face. He looked for the flash of her distinctive hair, the glint of her eyes, but she was nowhere to be seen. A fleeting sense of disappointment washed over him. He had been sure his victory would have impressed her, but it seemed she had slipped away during the commotion. Victor shook his head, a rueful smile tugging at his lips. Maybe he hadn't made the impression he thought he had. But then his gaze fell on the gleaming key in his hand, the key to the Fimble Lobby, and the smile returned in full force. He hadn't won the girl's attention, but he had won the challenge, and with it, the coveted prize. And that, he decided, was enough. Shrugging off the twinge of regret, Victor pivoted on his heel, his attention now fully on the victorious road ahead. As the crowd's cheers filled his ears, he left the tavern and strode towards the dock, the adrenaline from the match still coursing through his veins. The Fimble Lobby was just as impressive up close. It was a beauty. Victor ran a hand over its smooth surface, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. He climbed into the cockpit and settled into the pilot's seat. As he fired up the engines, the cockpit sealed with a hiss. Victor was starting to relish in the silence when, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the passenger side door opening. Before he could react, a figure slipped into the seat next to him. The door closed and Victor turned, eyes widening at the sight of the woman from the tavern.
You really thought you had it in the bag, didn't you?
She asked, a smirk playing on her lips, her eyes shimmering with amusement under the soft cockpit lights. Victor blinked, his surprise giving way to a slow grin.
I might have been a little overconfident,
He admitted, his gaze dropping to the bloodstains on his shirt.
but I did pull through, didn't I?
She chuckled, crossing her arms as she leaned against the wall of the cockpit.
Only because I messed with the gravity controls. You were about to be flattened, Vic.
Victor winced, a hand instinctively going to his bruised side.
I had it under control.
He protested weakly, earning another burst of laughter from her.
You owe me, Vic. Remember our bet?
Lena asked, holding out her hand expectantly, her palm facing up, revealing a small device strapped onto her wrist. Vic groaned, rolling his eyes as he pulled out his own device. With a few taps, a soft beep echoed through the cockpit, signaling the transfer of Atlas from his account to hers.
You're a real hustler, Lena, you know that?
He said, shaking his head in disbelief. She shrugged.
Just part of the plan. We got the Lobby, didn't we?
Victor sighed, leaning back in his seat.
Yeah, we did.
He said, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips as he looked out at the stars.
We did indeed.
Victor pulled the ship away from the dock, the station lights twinkling in the reflection of the ship's hull. As he guided the Lobby through the docking bay's force field and out into the void of space, Victor couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration. Despite the trials of the match, the punches he'd taken, the blood he'd spilled, he had emerged victorious. And then, as the glow of Proxima Station started to fade into the distance, Victor settled back in his seat. The distant stars were reflected in the glass of the cockpit as the Lobby zipped through the cosmos. The hum of the engine filled the silence, a comforting purr in the vast emptiness of space. Suddenly, a soft giggle pierced the tranquility. Lena, now comfortably slouched in the co-pilot's seat, was engrossed in her handheld device, a smile tugging at her lips. Her eyes, flickering with the device's soft light, danced with amusement. Victor turned towards her, a brow raised in question.
What's got you so amused?
She glanced over at him, her smile broadening.
Oh, nothing much. Just browsing through the social media.
And?
Victor prompted, trying to peer over her shoulder at the screen.
Just this Punab.
Lena replied, her fingers scrolling through a feed filled with vibrant images of a white furry figure.
His name is Sand. He's ridiculously charming and funny, and he's gaining followers faster than a comet.
Victor leaned back, a smirk on his face.
A Punab, huh? I suppose I'll have to keep an eye on this Sand. Competition's always good.
Her laughter filled the cockpit, a welcome sound against the backdrop of the vast, quiet cosmos. The Lobby, now a speck of light against the vast canvas of the galaxy, continued its journey, carrying its two occupants into the unknown.